I've always been drawing and painting, and it was my way of processing things that had an impact on me, that inspired me, that I found beautiful. So I drew athletes, Michael Jordan, pop stars like Madonna, George Michael. I made drawings of them, and by doing that, I gave it a place. I processed what inspired me. At some point, 20 years ago, I thought, okay, let's go for it. And I became an artist, or that's when I started making money off of my work. And some 10 years ago, I started focusing more on photography, as photography was my way of sketching. So when I was having a session with a model, next day I wanted to continue, and then the photography was good reference for that. But at some point I thought the photography had a quality of itself, so I started printing it. And then I missed the abstraction that you have in painting. So that's when I started using different materials to come to a more distant feeling. So for this presentation in Rotterdam, we decided to show works from the different series that I work around. I usually work around three main themes: dance or people, landscapes, nature, and still lifes, which I call recollection. And within the movement series, I show works of Madoka Karia and Prins Cradell, two dancers that dance with the Nederlands Danstheater in Den Haag. Madoka is Japanese and Prins is an American. And I think it's nice that I have three works of Mado, three works of Prins, and in the middle they meet. So it's movement, and they move to each other, and there it's a still moment where they meet. There's a conversation going, and I like how how I got the opportunity to use this big wall and have this series like this. Within the dance series, it's not just one work. Usually it's a whole movement. You want to use different shots from the series and sort of a Maybridge kind of movement study. That's at some point I want to have 20 works in a row of just one turn, and this is a first glimpse of that. Then I have then there's a box in which I try to capture a cloud. So it's a one of the general themes is that I want to possess all these things that inspire me, that I find so interesting. So I try to make them my own, and I've always done that as a little kid. I've drawn things that inspired me or that were an obsession for me, and now I found out that I still do that. So it's something, if I like clouds, I want to have them. So I'm very intrigued by nature inside, photography of clouds inside. How do you capture that? And one of the ways I try to do that right now is this glass box, and in there I have fog, and I want to have it going and going, and that's another attempt of capturing nature. There's more cloud works in the exhibition. I call them Nuage series, and the background is a reflecting material. It's a mirroring material, so it takes on the surrounding light. So the work moves with the day, and in the morning when it's still a little bit dark, then it reflects extra light, and when it becomes more light, you see the cloud in its hole. So the way that I build up my photographs was ideal to try and make skies as well. Of course, a little bit inspired by Jan van Gooyen, Leiden-based painter, and in his footsteps I try to make a series of cityscapes, these beautiful Dutch skies, clouds. You're part of a tradition in that sense, and so these clouds are standing on the shoulders of these 17th century cloud painters, and a new way of capturing clouds. Put them in my box, putting them in my frame, making them part of my collection. I call this collection, I call recollection. It's a memory of what you once saw. So it's a window into an experience, because it's very difficult to copy nature. It's impossible, but it's sort of a window into experience. And so this memory, this recollection, is more literal in my Still Life series, where I collect objects that were collected before. There's one wall of 20 works in the Recollection series, And I have different objects in this recollection series where I collect objects that were in collections of artists that I admire, like Morandi objects. There's 5 works of Morandi objects. There's 5 works with Rodin objects, so not objects that Rodin made, but objects that he collected that were in his studio that were inspirational for him. And then there's Japanese objects that were collected by von Siebold when he was stationed on Decima and brought them back to Leiden. These are all objects that I really wanted to possess and put into my collection, so these are there. There's one helmet that it's a little bit a statement in the Ukrainian war, is the golden helmet that was now stolen by the Russians who just marched into this museum and stole these Ukrainian gold artworks. And I think it's a bigger subject in the history of objects that are in museums. Where do they come from? Ownership. Whose is it? And by recollecting it, I also question the ownership in a way, because some of the objects that I acquired or recollected are also, they have copyright and are in a museum and I am not even allowed to use. But so that's also there. There's a seascape in the exhibition. It's called kasumi, which is a Japanese word. It does translate into fog, but it's also the feeling that comes with fog, this feeling of silence, of being isolated, of emptiness. And I think the emptiness is emphasized by the way this work is built up, because the fog is not in front, it's emptiness, because it's negative space. So behind the sea I printed white, and in the sky there's printed there's nothing, so the mist exists of nothing. And I think it's it nears the feeling you have when you're in a beautiful morning fog at the sea. My work is built up from several transparent layers. I photograph the object or the model through a material which is transparent. It's mud on 2 sides. And there I can play with what you see and don't see. So appearing and disappearing is important for me. I printed on the same material, so everything is transparent. First layer of color, and where I don't want the transparency, I put a layer of white behind it as well. So that's the material that's in the frame. The last layer you see on the front is a layer of craquelure, craquelé. It's my reference for time. It's a reference to painting. I started out as a painter. It's golden craquelé, so it also refers to kintsugi, the Japanese philosophy where broken earthenware you mend with golden glue, as to say that all scars are valuable to life. And then it's varnished mud, because I like this very mud introspective feel. The work should have a silent presence, and I think the transparency and the mudness enhances that. It is framed with a little 5 centimeter space to the background. Sometimes the background plays a role in the foreground in what you see as I paint it, or if I use a mirror or something. And so it takes on the surrounding light.